Oh, you know what? I could probably check it out.
Oh, they did? Are they good?
And I'll be able to read the comments.
Oh, really? Oh, really? Interesting. Interesting. Andy, are your children out of school?
They are.
Are they?
Yep.
First day or?
Yesterday was the first day.
Okay.
Yep.
What are they doing this
Yep,
summer?
no, we're good.
We're good?
Cool. Okay, we have audio, so we're good to go.
Okay.
You guys are ready to go back live?
Yep. All
Thank
right.
you for pausing.
No worries. All right, Linda, we're going back on the record. Linda?
Okie dokie.
Oh, okay. Wasn't sure if I had you or not. Let me try to turn this up a little.
Working with a regular mouse and, or like a laptop mouse and one screen, so.
Oh, boy.
I'm handicapping that to be for me.
Yes.
It's like a stone.
All right, so we're back on the record, yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So as mentioned before, finance has started to analyze, or has analyzed your financial proposal, and I would ask Linda to make a comment or two on what kind of we're seeing with that proposal.
So I did look at, I took in the Excel file that Michelle had forwarded me and priced it based on how many people fall into each step of it. Come up with a comparison on it. There was one thing I didn't even think of until I was looking at it yesterday, because I know when I looked at the proposal, see if I can pull that one up. The top of it said 2.5% increase to starting wage with adjustments to step increase percentages. So what threw me on it the first time is the increase to the starting sergeant's pay is 21.5%, not 2.5%.
So it's 2.5 to the starting pay, and then we use the correct the compression with
Not on
the.
the sergeant. The sergeant goes
Step
from
15.
$32 to $38.88,
So we
which is
in your last the last
21%.
contract, you guys had step 15 go to the sergeant starting. So we corrected the compression and then just copied step 15 to the starting sergeant again. So we followed your guys' format, just changing the value of the steps.
15 years. Well, okay. Well, I didn't know where that came from that way, but if I price out that proposal, and when I price them out, I just include taxes and estimated pension costs. So the cost of that proposal is, in round numbers, about $800,000 more than the approximate 4% that we currently have in the budget. And I don't have all the slides with me, because I know one of the goals on there is to increase the amount between steps, which, you know, makes perfect sense to me. So when I came up with kind of some alternate proposals, I started it with a 4% increase to the base, which is what we were running through basically everything else in our estimates. And then I ran through like a 2% on officers and a 3% between grades on sergeants.
So,
And
okay, oh, and,
that priced out at about, hang on, so that came in like $200,000 higher than the 4% we currently have in the budget, which is kind of more in line with what I might be able to spend.
mm-hmm.
We did get our tax estimates and tax value estimates in from the property tax appraiser, and they were not great sunshiny news. So our increase in ad valorem taxes next year is going to be approximately like only $1.6 million.
You're saying 4% to everything.
Okay.
And then 3%.
All right,
Let me
so-
fix the 4%.
So in other words, I'm hearing, you know, we're facing challenge a little bit there.
Correct.
Okay, okay. All right.
But I do see where we want to increase the amount in between
The distance.
steps. That makes perfect sense.
It does, it does.
So
Yeah.
just to make sure I understand, that would be a starting of 26 and then
Hang on.
two, okay. So
Again, working a laptop. I have it starting at sergeant 32. So it's starting at 26 for officers, yes.
Okay, so you,
33.28 for sergeant.
okay, so you didn't do the 4% then moving over step 15. You did 4% to officer starting and 4% to sergeant starting.
Correct.
Okay, and then 2% steps all the way down for officers and 3% steps all the way down for sergeants?
Correct.
Okay, so that,
And when I looked back at Michelle's presentation that I had a copy of where we were comparing it to other cities and definitely people were topping out lower. That was why I went for a bigger step in between on sergeants, was to get that, that maximum pay at 10 years. So it was more competitive compared to other areas because I didn't know that was lacking.
We just spent the last contract, the first part of this contract, working on starting salaries. Why would you want to increase the starting salary when your problem is not attracting people, but it's going to be retention when they look at the sheriff's office new proposals? If that makes any sense.
I think I understand what you're asking, and I think what we were thinking about is because some of these others are in negotiations this year, we don't want to fall behind on that. So that was, one concern.
Well, I'm just concerned about the retention for my guys that got 2, 3, 4 years, because if I was sitting in that position and I was looking at it long term, which we all know a 23-year-old is probably not looking at it long term, but if they do happen to look at it long term, I'm gonna look over at the sheriff's office and say, wow, I got a big pay raise, I'm not paying for my pension because the sheriff's office pays for his 3%. I'm not paying for my insurance, and I have lots of details, and a take-home car I can take just about everywhere, and use off-duty if I'm willing to stop for stranded motorists and respond to, cat and tree calls while I'm off duty. So I just don't understand I get just the numbers thing, but I'm looking at the overall logic. You're not doing any favors for yourself in retention, if that makes any sense.
I think so, but the counter question for me would be, what would that look like to you then? Or what would better fit that objective, or is it the wrong objective?
Well, one thing is I would suggest that you lower the whatever pay raise that you're talking about for the brand new people in step 1, you would lower that below whatever the steps are, because if you put a 4% pay raise at the beginning step, and then you're making everything else 2.5 or 2, whatever it was, I'm sorry, you're gonna create more compression, and it's gonna happen faster.
So would you
How is that
suggest?
going to create more compression?
Well,
Because you're not spreading out the pay raises.
so if you were to use, just let me try to put that into. So if we didn't start that 4% bump until step 3 or 4, would that make more sense? Is that what you're saying?
I would spread out that money for all the steps above 1, 2, to 3.
And
Three
not give it to those levels.
It always gets so awkward when you don't have steps going just straight across, but I mean, it's nice when your steps are just continuous. I mean, obviously you can go, 1.5 or something at the beginning and then bump it to a 2.5 later. But the compression if you increase the level between steps, people are going to be placed on the appropriate steps still. They're getting an increase, and then the amount in between steps increases. It does not give you more compression.
Well, I think
Mathematically,
he's
that's-
referring.
get rid of it.
Oh, go ahead, Brian.
There's 2 separate issues he's talking about.
Okay.
One, you're increasing starting pay by 4%, increasing steps by 2%. That in and of itself creates compression. because you're starting increasing salary more than you're increasing the steps.
Okay,
That is by definition causing compression.
okay,
The second issue that he's bringing up is kind of the way South Daytona cured it is they looked at the years which people were mostly leaving, which was years 4 and 8, if I'm not mistaken. And
Okay.
what they did was they increased the step. The step increase was vastly increased for those years to try to keep people there.
so make more, so that's where the,
Yeah,
Should be-
so,
so
so
there
the
should be
year,
a
the
quite a
year after
departure.
people leave, you want to bump
Uh-huh.
that step up
oh, I
so
see.
that they're getting a higher raise to stay,
Mm-hmm,
so that it basically gives a reason to stay rather than leave. And I assume Port
Mm-hmm.
Orange is probably the same, that there's years where the vast majority of people are leaving.
well, it's a funny thing, because we've had them, so just looking at last year, for example, let me see if I can pull that up, because I had it.
While you do that, can I ask Linda a question?
Yes,
Linda, so I'm working off like the 23-24 budget, because that's what I happen to have in my computer here. You guys budgeted for 4%, so I took 4% of that, added 800,000, so it looks like we're asking for 9.7 increase to the budget. Does that match your numbers, or probably a little less because I assume the budget increased in the years I don't have?
Michelle, do you just want me to send you a copy of the spreadsheet real quick?
no, because I haven't looked at it myself, I wanna see it,
Okay.
yeah, but,
This is the total increase is an average of about 7%
Mhm.
with
Okay.
numbers that I had come up with.
Okay,
that
in
makes
the
sense,
Yeah,
overall
that makes
cost
sense.
compared
That-
to what they're currently
that's
would be
about where I thought you'd be.
7%.
okay,
that helps me understand what numbers we're talking about, so.
okay.
Okay,
So,
and again, my numbers are including estimated pension and taxes in it.
Yeah,
too.
the whole
yeah,
personnel
the
line
whole
item.
fringed out, yeah.
Yeah.
So, looking at turnover, last year, we had 2 retire, 1 got another job, 3 left for personal reasons, and 2 were involuntary. So, we only had 8, turnovers there. So, 1 got another job not in the police field. 3 were personal. I wanna say, there was like a medical, none of it was, I'm going to another city for more money.
Has anybody ran them in ATMS to see if?
I have not lately. I can tell you because I made those lists.
Mm-hmm,
Last year wasn't as bad because we were refilling. We
Yeah.
hired the 28 people. Prior to that, we were losing, I think our retention on new hires was something like 10-14%. We were losing many people in the
Many.
first 3 years.
okay,
Once they get trained up, because right now everybody's in a 3-year contract. It's either you're leaving police work
yeah,
or you're gonna stick it out those first 3 years at the very least.
yeah,
They're all about to hit
that
2
number.
or 3 years, yeah.
So
We're about to
is
start bleeding.
step 4 where we need to make a significant bump? Is that what you're suggesting?
Going into year 4 is when they start
Is
to,
when that
that's when they're
moment
shopping
is.
for jobs.
I'd say that's one of them, and another one's
Okay.
10,
Yeah, 10.
whenever
And
you're
10?
vested.
That's when we lose the most
Okay.
people.
So,
Either we told them they're not good at this job and they leave at 1, or they make it to 4.
Uh-huh.
Or
Okay.
they make it through 4, we lose them at 10.
So if we were to, for example, come up with something where, taking the pay schedule, instead of putting anything on that start wage, which we already know is pretty competitive,
Mhm.
okay, save that and, maybe add 2% more onto step 4 and 2% more onto, or 1.5 more to step 10?
I
Is
think
that
that's certainly
what
gonna
you're
help
saying?
with the retention, to incentivize,
Uh-huh.
our folks to stay.
Okay.
So there's not that temptation of, well, look what the county's getting,
Yeah.
I'm at 4, I found out that I can sustain a career in law enforcement,
Mhm,
but
mhm.
do I wanna leave for better opportunities?
Mhm. So my experience sort of watching the county is that they are not necessarily a pay leader all the time. Is that
Have you had an opportunity to look at I have printouts of the
latest?
county, yeah.
They just signed.
they just signed? No, I
Yep.
have not
So,
seen that.
okay,
It wasn't signed yet, it was TA.
TA.
Oh, it was
Yeah,
TA,
so
I got
okay.
4 or 5 copies here.
Oh.
So you're welcome to
Happen to
share
have-
them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In case you didn't know.
I like that.
The
All
sheriff's
right.
office for a while was one of the lowest.
Oh, yes, I
And
think that's right.
Taken
They have
sustained
corrected
steps
that.
to correct that
Mhm.
with MOUs and contracts.
Mm-hmm,
And in fact, their raise structure, this contract is kind of unique in that it's not just yearly raises, there are some inter-yearly raises as well.
okay, okay.
Sheriff Chip was taking a long step to make Volusia County, Volusia Sheriff's Office very attractive with long-term retention.
Oh, I see, I see. Well, and, yeah, he's kind of fascinating. I'm a fan of him and Brady Judd, right? But I had to laugh.
I followed him around the grocery store on Sunday.
You did?
So Mike, I said hello.
That's hilarious.
You know how when you copy paste that one person on the first aisle and then you end up with them on every aisle after that?
Yeah. I had that with an
Yeah.
annoying screaming child. I would have rather had the sheriff. You know, but, you know, luck holds the way it does. So and so it makes sense to me that they have changed their philosophy and gotten very, very aggressive on that
Yeah.
end of things, you know, so looking at.
And what that's gonna do is drive up all the municipalities, or they're just gonna.
Certainly yes. You know, it doesn't, you know, I mean, I think we're still competitive and, you know, revenues are what revenues are. I mean, I had, you know, another group telling me, you know, all the cities are gonna do, you know, 8-10%, and that is not holding out to be true.
Oh, no, and you still have, we understand you still have the issue with
Yeah.
people, you know, in the legislature and the governor's office are fighting over
Yes, sir.
future
Yes.
stuff, but.
Yeah,
And
so,
that's why we had a very conservative.
yeah, and I think it was, you know, a very good proposal as well. So I feel like if we can meet the objective of trying to hit those pain points,
Mhm.
you know, Linda, do you think we could calc something that does that? Kind of like we were just saying?
Yes. Send me a copy of that sheriff's one too, and I can look
Okay.
at where their increases hit and how those years of service, you know,
Hit
line
on
up
it.
to it. I mean,
Yeah.
granted, I mean, we all know going to the sheriff is a different job than working for a municipality.
Yeah, in some ways, I mean, you know.
It's all law
it's-
enforcement, I think, right?
There's a lot
What's
more
that?
opportunities
It's
and
all law
specialties.
Yeah, I mean, law
There's
enforcement's law
gonna be
enforcement.
people that want to go do that.
Right.
And want the opportunity of all the different, you know,
Yeah.
specialty divisions that go with it and all the overtime. I mean, I had a kid who did it, so I understand completely. And then there are
Yeah.
people that don't want to do that who are gonna, you know, not be drawn by that money.
Yeah, yeah. But nevertheless, you know, we wanna
Yeah.
be able to get good ones as opposed to duds that don't wanna, you know, that with no ambition, that's no
Mhm.
good.
Yeah.
So,
100%.
yeah, so I think, maybe we keep tweaking that and come up with something that hits those pain points at 4 and 10,
Mhm.
and then not put something on the bottom part of the wages. Is that what I'm hearing? Is more sensible?
Yeah, I
Yes.
think so.
Okay.
But I think, you know, another concern that we need to look at here is this, you know, we're moving if we're giving 4% to step one
Mm-hmm,
for officers and sergeants, that's gonna move the, sergeant probation to an equivalent of step 11.
What? Unless I typed wrong, hold on, let me double check.
What time do you,
33,
And we were
y'all been there before you moved over?
3328,
say that again?
12.
How long?
Between 12 and 13.
Have they, they're both sergeants, right?
You guys are both sergeants?
Yes. I went up
Yeah.
at 9, I don't know when Andy went.
I went up to 5.
Most,
See, that's, I think.
It's around
down at
6, I would say,
15 is
yeah.
ridiculous. Well, not ridiculous, you know, I feel like well, we've had opportunities in there too for people to go. I don't know if it's gonna close up because some of you guys that are sergeants now are younger than some of the people that were, you know, falling out of it before. But it seems like we've had a lot more people move into those roles in a lot less than 15 years.
Rhodes got
Those are
promoted
the
at
people
what,
you want in those roles.
16?
Hmm?
So, yeah,
17?
are those the people you want in those roles? Do you only want it to
Oh,
be?
yeah, sometimes you don't want to
young
do that.
people coming
And
in?
absolutely, some people
Mhm.
just want to take care of themselves and not have to take care of other people.
Yeah.
Honestly, a lot of that's the result of, we had poor retention. Our only
Uh-huh.
options were
Oh, to do
5-year
that?
guys.
I see.
You either made it to detective and didn't want to leave.
Uh-huh.
Everybody, I have very few people with over 10 years, and
Okay. Yes, and that is true.
I just feel that that's counterproductive with our reasonable request of just trying to fix this compression issue. You know, that's
So-
gonna compress everything down even more.
Can you, and forgive my
I think
ignorance, just
you're
being
gonna
that,
have to define, you're gonna have to define what you think is compression compared to what I think is compression, because
yeah, we might be using it interchangeably a little bit. So Andy, would you mind telling me, and all of you really, but just forgive my ignorance on the matter. Tell me the difficulty. I'm failing to understand what we're talking about with the sergeant piece. You know, what we're trying to say.
Yep, so our
That's
initial
just my
proposal, our initial
inexperience with you all.
proposal followed the city's current pay rate.
Uh-huh.
So step 15
Okay.
on the city's current pay rate
Mhm.
as an officer at $32.
Yeah.
So what we did, and then the probationary sergeant is also $32.
Okay.
So the city had set that. They said, we're gonna set the probationary sergeant
Mhm.
at the same rate of pay as step 15 for officer.
Okay.
So our initial proposal that we gave on the 12th
Mhm.
set the probationary sergeant at that same step 15
Mhm.
for officer, 3888.
Okay.
And when we ran some numbers with what Linda's telling us about 4% to starting and then a 2% down the line for officer and a 3% for sergeant, it now moves that probationary to, is this number correct?
yes, that's
3328, which is between
12 and 13.
12 and 13.
And if it were to still be at 15, that number would be higher, yes?
34.
3499.
And so the issue there is
A lot of agencies start their sergeant scale at the end of their officer scale.
at the
At
end
the
of
other
their
end,
officers.
so-
So you
What
would,
Volusia is changing to is
Uh-huh.
the highest officer step is lower than the lowest sergeant step.
That's,
Okay.
And that's to give a reason to promote.
Yeah.
Because it's no matter where you are in your career, it's still beneficial to go to sergeant. So what they're trying to do with that is they're trying to get some of their older officers who have the experience to
Oh.
become sergeants who are supervisors
Uh-huh.
who then can convey that experience to
Ah.
the officers on the road.
Okay,
all your
I'm starting to
liabilities on the
understand now.
sergeant.
So
It should-
for us though, would that be a very big bite on wage, that
yeah.
that
Even though
issue?
there's only 13 of them, that's where the kicker was coming in.
And if so, how would we solve that you know, is there a way to step into that problem? Is there a way to,
And that's my recommendation for all
Uh-huh.
of this, is you're not gonna get all of it corrected in 1 year. And that was the issue with last year, we didn't really have a direction with the negotiations, it was
Mhm.
just trying to get it up.
yeah,
And the city didn't really have any direction on where they wanted to go, so it's just kind of one of those, let's just get something
That's what they're
done.
oh, I see.
That's what we're
And
asking.
that's,
They're
the
saying
best
that's
thing that can be done for the city and the unit is to kind of figure out how,
Mhm.
where you would optimally want to get to and then work towards that with every contract.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I was kind of doing with the steps, was comparing it to what Michelle had told me, looking at the base pay for a sergeant and what they were topping out at. Although couldn't tell from her comparable data if sergeants were topping out at 10 years.
So what she's saying is, what I don't know about the comparative data, right? Because we, looked at so as far as I can tell, we're about number 2 on the sergeant pay. At the start wage is 32, but we're lower at the max, right? So
Correct.
I had interpreted that as your objective was to raise, that we're in sort of a curve. Sorry to draw pictures.
Starting pay
That
was
we're-
already
Increase the slope,
okay
yeah.
Yep.
ish,
Yep.
according to
If you look
the,
at-
the comps I saw.
Yeah. Oh, no.
Jumping into 38 was like,
So the concern was,
Off the scale.
we like that idea,
And that was our,
right?
that was our entire discussion last year, because we had
I
seen
see.
the scale that just basically crashed towards the end
I
of
see.
careers with Port Orange, and we were trying to fix that last year a little bit.
It just goes straight.
But yeah,
Yes.
there is no real
There's no
going up.
real motivation to, yeah.
So, and what our argument was last year was that gives no motivation to stay, because why are you gonna stay when you're looking at, I think, if I remember correctly, it was 5 or 10 years down the road, it was like a $2.50 difference or something
Yeah.
like that. So it's one of those, when officers are looking at it, they're going, well, in 10 years, I'm only gonna be getting $2 more, I can have that in 2 years somewhere else.
I
And that's
see.
where
Who
we
was
were
it that
having
wanted
a lot
to
of
stop it
issues.
at 10 years?
What's that?
Hmm? What's that?
Who was it that wanted to stop the sergeant pay escalation, the steps at 10?
Oh, I don't know.
I believe that's how it
That
always was.
Yeah, that would have been before my time.
I mean, I understand it if you're thinking of it as somebody starting after 15 years, so at, 25, they're out.
I don't wanna
But,
collapse
you
the
know,
scale just yet, though, because
No,
the,
I'm,
yeah.
I'm
Or I mean,
thinking of
expand the
expanding it.
scale. I don't wanna,
Yeah,
No, you're dealing with a whole nother. round
yeah,
of
that's a
problems
whole
there.
different set of problems. But it makes me wonder if we were to, if we really wanna fix that, for example, because we can't have it all, right? So it makes me wonder if we should punt the distance between stuff and just get to where we can get that right and fix it. And it would just be moving these guys, but if we really wanna fix it, is that where we should spend the money this year?
Well, I want the money to be spent evenly amongst everybody. I
We
want
can't always get that though, because,
I want it to be
you know.
fair for everybody. The days
Yeah.
of having a 6 cent raise for
Mhm.
my 19 and 20-year-old guys, that can never ever happen again.
Yeah.
It's gotta be fair. We have to make it as fair and cut the pie as even as we can, so everybody feels whole.
yeah, but
Yeah.
to put, go from 32 to 38 there,
But I don't wanna take a
It's an
step forward and
expensive-
2 steps back,
Yeah.
Like, I wanna make everything proportionately fair,
Mhm.
right? I don't wanna fix some things and then, take 2 steps back on others, if that makes
So-
sense.
so we
If I could make a
kind of need to
recommendation
look
for
at
both
Hold on,
sides.
Linda.
what you're looking to top out at and what you're looking to start at.
yeah.
And then, I mean, because I know if you compare that 38 as a starting wage, that was kind of like whole off the charts kind of thing.
Yeah, all right, Brian?
So if I could make a recommendation for both sides, you've got a 3-year contract coming up next year where a lot of these problems can be fixed over years.
Mhm.
I'd pick one issue that you want to deal with in wages this year and get that issue as fixed as possible so that the next 3-year contract, you can go with
Yeah.
a 3-year plan,
Yep.
which would really spread the money out so that
That
the
it can
city
truly
wouldn't
be
be in a
fixed.
bind and you're not
Mhm.
fighting to get. But, so I'd pick one good issue,
Mhm.
get that as fixed as possible, and then continue. And I mean, obviously, everybody's got to get a little bit of a bump,
Yep.
but I wouldn't worry about being fair with this one. I'd worry about getting an issue fixed and then work on with the 3-year contract.
I think that's a great
Sure.
comment. And everybody wants to give everybody something, but in this opener, we
Mhm.
have to say, what is our real objective? And I was interpreting your objective when we've talked before as getting some distance between those steps
Yes,
as the main objective.
yes.
Right? The other objective, which is, really fixing this, this issue with the sergeant pay that you just described very well, by the way.
Mhm.
I think Brian's comment is exactly right, which is, that's a bigger bite
Mhm.
that perhaps we take as a project to deal with for the next open book. Because that one, we're gonna have to figure out how we do that one.
Mhm.
I think it's a fair statement to say we have to fix that for the reasons that y'all just said.
Mhm.
And we see that in the data, so I think it's valid.
Mhm.
But I'm not sure we can hit that all in one bite here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if so, I agree with you, we'll take the 4% thing off that bottom of the wages and let's bake that into those other 2 steps so that it creates some of that, for lack of a better term, incentive, at the pain points that were already known, right? So for us, what we'll do is we'll rework some of that stuff send it to you,
Okay.
have you take a look at it, and if it looks good, then I'll take that to Shade as one of our recommendations.
And since it stayed largely the same, I'd recommend looking back at the past few years with when people, what years people are leaving.
Okay.
And
Just above here.
Forget about why they left, but look
Uh-huh.
at the years
The
they
years,
left, because you're
okay.
gonna see when those pain points come.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm happy to pull all
And
that
I
out.
think, like you said, I think it will be year 4, because that's been every
Yeah.
agency, once they're out of a 3-year contract,
Mhm.
people tend to pull. And then, yeah, it should be around 8 to 10 that you have another pain point.
Okay, all right, and that makes sense, and, you know, you guys have the experience of dealing with the other groups too, so you've seen probably those trends with the pain point issue.
And it has, as far as I've seen, it has really helped South Daytona, even though they've had other issues.
Yeah, to put some,
Yeah.
okay,
Put some more money that next year, because then people are going, well, I can get, you know, a 5 or 6% raise this year,
Mhm.
or I can go somewhere else and,
mm-hmm,
well, now instead of 2 years to get up there, it's gonna take you 3 or 4 years.
yeah,
Okay.
that makes a lot of sense. What, so, you know, how would that go from a membership standpoint? Well, not that I need to necessarily worry about that more than you, but I like our employees to be engaged and satisfied as well.
Well, any proposal is gonna have to go
To the
member-
membership.
to the membership.
Okay.
for
Yep.
the-
Yeah, so if we didn't move those first few steps in order to create some of this stuff, you know, going forward, I think, you know, they could see the future, and I think that would be seen as, you know, at least fair.
Well, they understand the data already from the studies that I presented to you as well,
Okay.
so they understand
The situation.
some of the issues that we're having this year
Okay,
and trying to fix based on the, you know, the flat line of the scale, so.
gotcha, okay,
I think it's gonna be well received.
okay, all right, very good.
And I'll tell you, with that type of thing, it doesn't just come down to money.
Yeah.
Because when these guys know that they're gonna have the guy they trust by their side the next
Mhm.
year, 2 or 3 years, it makes a huge morale difference.
That's a great point. That's a great point. And, you know, even in the community, I think, you know, residents, they get to know some of you guys and they see you in the community, and having the same faces out there is important to the city, so they know, you know, that's your community, not some stranger that, you know. So I agree with that too.
Yeah, we both live here, we both want good police
That's
officers.
right, exactly right.
We have a vested interest just in case.
Yeah, so, that's, I think that's some progress on this
So
discussion.
if we're looking at 2% throughout the steps for officers, what kind of percentage are we thinking for those benchmarks of year 4 and year 10?
Well, I'm saying take that idea of the 4 and, you know, put 2% more on those 2 steps.
Okay,
And let them review the data to see where
Yeah.
the pain points are. and then,
Yeah,
Have their second shade meeting to see where the money's at, and
Yeah.
what they can do, and then they'll come back and let us know, and then we can come up with it. For now, we're just kind of guessing.
okay.
yeah, so I'll pull some, you know, turnover data from past and see what, you know, if we have a consistent pain point, or if it's different than what we think it is, because that's about the time it's different than what we think it is.
And it could be.
You know?
Yeah.
It absolutely could be.
I mean, it surprised me more than once to look at this stuff, you know, so. Linda, what were you
And
gonna say?
obviously, yeah, right now there's so many people in those bottom steps that,
Yeah.
you know, if they're getting less of an increase, there's more money to spread around above that.
That is true.
Because there's so many people that are concentrated down there in those first 4 or whatever.
Mhm.
And frankly, that's the best way you can hold impression as well.
Yes,
Mhm.
no, you're right about that. You're right about that. And it's the whole issue of career development, right? I can see where I'm going. I can see we've got a stable contract. I mean, we can sell all that stuff from a recruiting and attraction standpoint. So, okay, good. All right,
Yeah,
good.
there's like 30 people on the officer scale up to 4 years.
30?
Like
Yeah.
30,
So
yeah.
that's a third of the PD.
Yep,
Roughly.
so 1/3, yep.
Oh, yeah, almost
Yeah,
all.
so
almost
it's like,
all.
if that
All
money,
official.
if you start with a lower increase,
Yep,
that sort of saves a lot of money because
Yeah.
it gives you more money to spread
on those
above
other,
that.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So yeah, we might be able to rework that even better than we think. So, and still with officers, we're still very competitive with those starting wages. We already know
Yep.
that we're number 2 after Daytona, for that. And, our max is not number 2, but it's not number 13 either, so.
Right.
We're in the middle of the pack there, so.
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Okay. What other topics did we want to discuss today? That's the only topic I wanted to discuss today.
Did you have any information or any discussions for the other opener that we had?
Yes, and, you know, I kind of come back to my comment before. You know, we have fire, we have Mage, we have you guys open this year.
Mhm.
And I kind of look at, you know, and then we have two, you know, new council and stuff like that. I wish that we would consider some of those pension type issues on the full book piece, because we have to get, you know, these studies and and I feel like it might bog down the process. I would rather, if it were me,
Mhm.
get your goals met on the wage side for this reopener,
Mhm.
and perhaps parking lot that issue, so there's more time for studies, We can do that, but,
Especially,
yeah.
especially with it looking at tier 2 stuff, because
Yeah.
the tier 2 improvements tier 2 guys are not walking out the door next week without a pension improvement. We've got time to fix it with any luck.
That was our thought process, right?
Okay.
I don't know if it's the right thought process, and I certainly will fully deal with it if you want to do it this year. But I feel like with these other contracts open,
Mhm.
a new council, pressure on the there's gonna be pressure on the tax thing. There just is, right? These guys.
contracts this year?
Yes, 2 full books. Yeah, so I wish that you would consider whether we wanna deal with that dragon right now. I'll just
Okay.
leave it there.
Did the city have another idea of another opener for this year, other than the wages?
I personally do not.
Okay.
But if you guys did, I would, but I personally do not.
Okay.
Your contract's not bad at all. You know, I will loop back with departments and make sure that's still true, but that is just a thought I wanted to put in your brains. You know, I certainly honor whatever you want to do,
Mhm.
you know, but I see what can we get done versus what should be, what we need versus what we can get done. And I see that there's a little bit of a gulf between those two things. And so I would, you know, and at risk of kicking my own ass for the fact of open book will be more torturous, but
Yeah.
I, you know, would ask you to consider whether it makes sense to do that now,
Okay.
or now that we know what that ask will be, it gives us some more time to do some research.
Okay.
Just a thought.
Can we,
And to understand council better.
Yes. Yeah, because we don't know what their philosophy is now that it's changed a bit. And they're learning. They're learning, and they're anxious to learn, but they're brand new.
One week, we would like to take a little
Caucus?
caucus break.
Yes, sir?
And number 2, you know, our complete contract opens up next year. as a
Yes, sir.
speaker, So we'll have the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. And we can start that as early as needed so that we can get into the meat of some of the stuff and really fix it.
Yeah.
I'm happy to do that
Start as soon as
forever.
this closes.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'd love to do that. You know, me doing first contract with you guys on full book, you know, Mage has already learned and IAFF has already learned. I go line by line and we fix it all. Right?
We'll just start.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We're gonna take 5.
Okay, thank you. Linda, I'll put you on.
We're unmuted.
We're unmuted, all right. Back on? All right, back on the record.
Okay.
So, how was your caucus?
Good. Thanks for giving us a few minutes to discuss. You know, there's a lot of information to kind of take in and absorb.
Okay,
Um,
okay,
So we're at a point where we're ready to just, you know, let you work some numbers,
okay,
hit those benchmarks where you see they need to be,
okay,
and, you know, we'll take it back to the membership.
okay. And how do you feel about my other issue I brought up?
Well, I understand the city's standpoint on not wanting to open that until we have a full book. Certainly makes sense. Just have to have a membership meeting and see what they want to, you know,
Okay.
try to go with the second
Yeah.
potential second opener.
And, you know, my HR advocacy side is like, I want you to get, you know, this objective met, but I don't want it to get obfuscated by this other, you know what I
Sure.
mean? So that's kind of where I personally am coming from on it, you know, so,
We understand there's gonna be a lot more freedom with getting it done with a 3-year contract rather than.
I agree, yeah. Yeah, and we get to have a longer, you know, ability to work it through properly, you know, I feel sometimes like these reopeners are very, you know, under the gun, and then we're waiting on council, and then we're waiting on all these reports and all this other, and sometimes I think it gets, you know, gets us distracted from other things that can get done, you know, so. I have no other, items on the agenda today, do you?
I do not.
No? Any other comments or conversation we need to have today?
Don't believe that there is.
Okay, all right. So, I'll check in with you, you know, kind of when I know other things are, you know, shade and stuff like that are happening, so that we can schedule accordingly, so we honor everybody's time, and then we'll just go from there.
All righty.
Does that make sense?
Yes,
All
ma'am.
right, thank you so much for this session. It's been very pleasurable as always, and we'll get her done. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.